Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just pray that your holy angels would be with us today, and thank you for your holy Sabbath. We ask that you forgive us for our sins, that you give us wisdom and understanding, that as we study, we will increase in the accumulation of oil for our lamps. We love you and praise you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. So I really appreciated your sermon today, especially on talking about Daniel in the later part of chapter 7, because to me, that's the answer for Adventism. It's not higher medicine, walk through a cornfield. That is what happened. But biblically, as a biblical answer, we see events that we can see on earth. The lion came out of the water, these came out of the water. And then there's something that's not on earth we can't see. And when it happens after this. So if we go on the timeline, we got the Dark Ages here. After this, then the little book is opened and the judgment's there. But it's not like we're just making stuff up, like we're a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses picking dates out of the sky saying, oh, Jesus didn't come, he came, or whatever. So where's your witness? Daniel, he's my witness. And who's going to do the preaching? Who's supposed to be doing the preaching in the end of the world?
We are.
Mm-mm.
The charge 4,000.
Daniel will stand in a slot in the last days. We're the messengers of Daniel. Seventh-day Adventists are to give the prophecies to the world. We're to say that the hour of his judgment has come. First angel's message. That comes from Daniel. Because Daniel, you can't tell when the hour of his judgment comes if you can't prove from the Bible when the hour of the judgment is. But you're going to get that from Daniel chapter 9, the 70 weeks, and the restoring and building of Jerusalem. So this is the foundation of our faith. Whether we want to agree to that or not, this is our foundation. This chart was made to put all of the visions of Daniel and John. There's nothing on here that doesn't belong on here. Everything on here belongs to the message that the preachers gave and went to the entire world. Now, when these charts were made, it caused a problem. Because Miller was already preaching, people were getting pretty into it. We know there was at least 50,000 on the day before October 22nd. But this 50,000, they were taken in because everybody was on board. The whole world was excited about it until this chart was made. When the chart was made, the problem with the chart was, well, down here at the bottom it says 1843. What happens if we all endorse this and he doesn't show up? You know what? Let's have a meeting. Let's have a board meeting. And now let's shut this message down. And they close their doors, and we have what's called the shut door, and all the churches close their doors on the message, and then there's only 50,000 Seventh-day Adventists, or not Seventh-day Adventists left. And of course, on the 21st there was 50,000, on the 22nd there was only 50. Just up here, what we wrote up here is just simply the going into Babylon 677 and 1844 and the time of the end, or the Dark Ages, the Papal Rule, and time of the end is 1798. Are you aware of that? That Ellen White has also said that the time of the end is 1798, because that's when the book is open for Daniel, right? So the Jews always had the book of Daniel, but they couldn't understand it until that time.
It was a curse to them.
Right. So now there's a lot of controversy today over this 2520, and it's found in Leviticus 26, but that's not the only place it's found. But there's a little bit of a misunderstanding, and even the people who believe in 2520 don't understand the 2520. So what it is, let's go to Daniel chapter 9. And actually, let's do it this way. Look in your folders and go to tab number 14. And the first page should be the oath. Can you go ahead and just go ahead and help him find his? So, the Leviticus 26 is the covenant. When you read to the first 13 verses, it says, I will give you rain in due season, I will feed you, I will keep the enemies out of your land, the beasts won't come in your land. 5 will chase 100, 10 will chase 10,000. And you will plant your crops and you will eat them and not somebody else. And it says, if you will obey my covenant and keep my statutes and obey my laws, I will be your God and you will be my people. Leviticus 26 is an entire contract. With every contract, it says if you pay me $325 a month, you get to go home with this Mercedes, as long as you pay all your payments on time. But the small print is if you don't pay your payments, then I get to repo the car. Well, every contract has that, and the covenant has that. That's why it says, when we move on, and it's on the back side of the oath. If you turn the oath over for a second, go down to 26:12. And I will walk among you, and will be your God, and ye shall be my people. I am the Lord your God, which brought you forth from the land of Egypt. Ye shall not be their bondmen. I have broken the bands of your yoke, and made you go upright. But if you will not hearken unto me, and will not do these commandments, and if you despise my statutes, and if your soul abhor my judgments, so that you will not do all my commandments, but that you break my covenant, I also will do this unto you. Now there's 5 punishments that he says. The first one he says, I'm going to give you the burning ague and the terror by night and whatever, some terror and stuff. And then it says, but if you don't for all this obey me or keep my covenant, then I will punish you 7 more times. And then he gives them a bunch of more punishments. He says, if for all this you will not listen, if I send Isaiah again and you again don't listen to Isaiah, then I will punish you more. And then it says, if you for all this you won't obey, then I'm going to punish you 7 times. There's no more there. This is a time prophecy, and we'll show that there's 2 here in this prophecy. 2, and most people who understand 20 do not realize there's 2 prophecies here. And then it says, if for all this you will not obey me and break my covenant, then I will punish you 7 times again. But then it goes through the description of what he's going to do on that final time. And it says that you will eat your children. I will make your cities waste. Now, who is he talking to? He's talking to the Hebrew children he's making a covenant with. He's making a covenant with the Hebrew children, right? And the Israelites are already gone because they went and followed after Baal too much. And finally, God says, you know what? You are no longer a people. That's in Isaiah chapter 7, verse 8 and 9. And they became the Samaritans. And how do we know that the Samaritans are the other 10 tribes of the Hebrew children? Can anyone show me from the Bible why we know that the 10 tribes that were the Hebrew children were the Samaritans, that that's who they were? Well, one day Jesus sat down next to a well. And the woman says, who are you, a Jew, speaking to me? Don't you know that we don't speak to each other? But what does she say later? She says, our father Abraham dug that well. So she's a child of Abraham. But she's not a Jew, obviously, because she's a Samaritan. She's one of the other 10 tribes. So they got wiped off the face of the earth, and now God's people are the Jews. Ever since God finally had enough with them, the Jews were the people of God, along with the tribe of Benjamin and some Levites. I don't know how the Levites got split, but they were working in the temple. So I don't know if some of them stayed with Jeroboam or not, but there's a lot of different ways to go. So I'm just going to try to bring myself back down again here.
We were just reading it as a family that the Levites, of course, were with the tribe of Judah and Benjamin when they were taken into Babylonian captivity. And when the call was given for Ezra, and during the time of Ezra for them to return to Jerusalem, she says there in Prophets and Kings that the Levites were the one tribe that was missing. They were coming back to Jerusalem. And she said it did a great disservice to all the people. These Levites should have been the foremost in faith to step forward and go with them to rebuild and rebuild Jerusalem, but they had become comfortable in their homes and their new territory, and they did not go up. And this caused many of the other Jews to become discouraged, and they also decided not to go back to Jerusalem.
Nice. I mean, it's not nice that that happened, but it's nice to have that information.
Some of them end up going though?
They went later. They were chastised, though, by Ezra. And we know that many of these Jews who did not go back later, during the time of Esther, had to face the death decree during Haman's time and all of that. So our personal families our personal family's lesson was always obey the voice of the Lord when the Lord tells you to go somewhere or do something, because He saves you a lot of trouble in the long run.
I got another lesson. There's also a good one, is when Elijah goes and he leaves the brook Cherith and he has to go see the woman at Zarephath, and she has the meal with the 2 sticks and the child. He says, you have to feed me first. Well, the woman is the church, and Elijah's the prophet. And it's like, if you eat that meal, you're going to die. But if you feed me and keep the prophet alive first, your oil will never run out. So we never want to allow the prophet to be lost, because without the prophet, the church dies. I don't know if you ever saw that, but that's a good lesson in the story of Elijah and Elisha. Elijah also has a child and a woman in the story, but it's a relationship between the prophet and the church. It's Elijah and the woman. So, yeah, we want to make sure the prophet does not die. So, a couple caveats. I appreciate that one. I like that. So there's no question, regardless of whether there's any controversy over a number or anything else, there's no question that Babylon took Manasseh captive in 677 BC. And in 607, 70 years later, then Nebuchadnezzar comes in and takes all the rest of the people, and he destroys Solomon's temple. That's when the temple was destroyed, and that's why we have the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, because we have to rebuild the temple. There's no doubt that this history happened. It's just for some reason there's controversy over talking about it. Every one of the pioneers talked about it. Ellen White does talk about it, but she doesn't say 2520 anywhere in her writings. But the pioneers don't say 2520 in their writings very much either. But they do a lot when they were preaching this message. But this is the first angel's message. This is the message that came to the world. Fear God and give Him glory, because the hour of His judgment has come. But you can't tell anyone when judgment is if you can't follow down from Babylon, Medo, Persia, Greece, Rome. And like he showed us today in chapter 7, we know that the event that happens after the little horn and these thrones are cast down is that the judgment begins with the 1,000 thousands and 10,000 times 10,000. The books were open. So it's really odd. It seems to me that most of the controversy is coming from lack of understanding, and even Ellen White even has a quote I don't have with me right now, but she says that in the end light will come, and people will brace themselves as though it was something that they should fight against. So if it's not this, there's something else going to come into Adventism, because Ellen White speaks for God's people, that light will come and they will fight against it and say that there's no light there. So, but anyway, so let's go to Daniel chapter 9, and that's on the oath here. At the top of the page in the oath, it is Daniel 9:11. So it's right here on the page. But the way it's on the page is, this is eSword. Now on eSword, they have what's called King James Plus. Does anyone know what King James Plus means? It has all the Hebrew numbers for all the words that are in that verse. So when we look at the word, let's read what it says here in the chapter 9, verse 11. It says, "Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, and even by departing that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that was written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him." Now, if any sin is going on, what's it against? God. It's against God's covenant, because they promised they weren't going to be bad, right? But their promise was in the covenant. So he's saying the promise that was made, the oath that was made in the book of Moses. So if we're in the book of Moses and a promise has been broken, and now we're under the curse, then that means that we're past verses 1 through 13, and now we're being punished because we broke the oath. We're receiving the curses. So, and Leviticus has in it, Leviticus 26, I will be your God, I'll do all these things for you, but if you don't obey me, I will punish you. And it tells you about the curses, right? And so what I want to look at is this word oath, because, see, people think that because it says I'll punish you 7 times, that 7 times is the curse, but it's not. The 2520 is not the curse. Even though it's 7 times, it's not the curse. I mean, it is the curse, but it's not the 7 times. So watch this. So the word for oath is H7621 in the Hebrew. That is, it shows the Hebrew writing, it shows the pronunciation of it, and it says Shabuah. It's the feminine participle of 87650. So 87650 is a feminine participle of another word. In other words, it's like an adjective or a helping word. It's not the actual root. So we want to go to the root of 7650. And so 7650 says, a primitive root properly to be complete, but used only as a demonstrative of 7651. That means this word is never used without using the other word. And the other word is 87651, and that one says, to seven oneself, that is to swear as if repeating a declaration 7 times. So catch this. In the Hebrew language, the people of God, the only people serving God, the Philistines' language doesn't matter. Doesn't matter about any other language. The Hebrews, the people who are worshiping God in their language with their prophets on their scriptures, the word for an agreement or an oath, there's only one in their language, and it is to swear 7 times. They don't have a one-time swear. So let's prove that. And turn the page to the next page on the other side of the oath, and we're going to Genesis chapter 21. And this is an occasion when Abraham was called out of the land of Ur to follow God. He says, if you'll follow me, I'll be your God, right? And so there's this fighting going on over this well that was dug. And they're saying, hey, no, Abraham's going, no, we dug this well, and they're fighting over this well in the desert. And here's what it says. It says, verse 21-25. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of the well of water which Abimelech's servant had violently taken away. And Abimelech said, I wot not who hath done this thing. Neither didst thou tell me, neither yet I heard of it but today. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. So here we have a covenant. We're not talking about something else. We're talking about a covenant. All covenants are the same. Covenants are covenants, right? And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? And he said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that it may be a witness unto me that I dig this well. Now, what is our witness to our covenant? Is it the 10 tables that we swore upon, that we will keep his laws and do his will? That you will be our God and we'll be our people, we'll obey you and keep your commandments? The Ark of the Testimony? Those 2 tables are our testimony that we will obey God. So here's Abraham saying that these 7 lambs are a testimony that is ratifying this covenant. Our testimony, or the first covenant, is based upon the 10 commandments in the Holy of Holies, in the Ark of the Covenant, underneath the seat of God. The most holiest thing of God, other than himself, for us, is the 10 commandments, and it is our covenant, or our agreement, or our contract. But in the contract it says in Leviticus, if you decide to break this contract that we have made, which in their language is only one kind of a covenant, 7 times. That's why there's 7 ewe lambs. That's why in the language it says this word means to swear, as into swearing 7 times. So in our ways, if we were kids and we were playing, I'd go like, oh, I dare you to kick that dog. You're like, no, man, he bites. Oh, yeah? And then some other kid says, yeah, I kicked him. I'm like, no, you didn't. He's like, yes, I did. Swear to God, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye. That was proof. If you said that, you did it. But see, in the Hebrews, they wouldn't have said that. They would have said, oh, yeah? Swear to God, hope to die, stick 7 needles in my eyes. Because their language didn't have a single covenant. The word for covenant in their language means to swear 7 times. That's just their language. You can't un-Hebrewize that. In their language, they did not have a word for a single covenant. Every covenant they made was swearing 7 times. So when we look at the curse, which is, I will punish you 7 times for this, he's saying, you promised me 7 times. And therefore, if you break it, let me just be clear, I'm going to punish you 7 times. And if you don't listen to me, let's just be clear again, I'm going to punish you even more. And if you don't for all that, if you still don't listen, then I'm going to punish you for 7 years. It says 7 times. And this is a literal 7 years, and I'll show you this in a minute.
Can I ask you?
Yes, yes.
So the original word is
7-5 Shavua, yeah.
so that word is just an oath.
That word, when you look at the definition, it says that it is the feminine passive participle of another word. It's not the root word. When we want to find out what a word means, we can read what it says, but if it has a root word, that tells us what the root of that word is. It has more meaning. Because if I say football, you're going, oh, I know what a football is. But actually it comes from the word foot and ball. So you have a ball that doesn't have to be any shape, and you have a foot. And those two together mean something else. But the root word of what made this word is a word that means 7 times.
So I have another question.
Yes.
The root word savah. Is that right?
Is that what it is? Shaba or something?
Oh,
7650.
But it says it's only ever used.
So it's Shabbat. Anyway, so the question is that word to make an oath is made of Abraham when he sets aside 7 lambs.
He set aside the 7 lambs because it fit the action that he was doing. He was going to swear that I dug this well. And the 7 lambs is a testimony that this covenant that we're going to make together, I'm swearing that I have dug that well, and this is a covenant, and now we're even going to change the name of the place. I think it's Beersheba or something like that.
So my question is there a second witness or another place in Scripture where it says that, where it demonstrates somebody swearing 7 times using this word?
I didn't go look for a bunch of other ones. There might be others, but we have the language, which the language is going to be what it is. I mean, if I give you the definition for a car, I'm not going to find a second definition for car. Car is car. I can give you one for truck. I can give you one for Chevrolet. But the language itself has its own.
Yeah, not looking for a second definition, just looking for a second example.
No, I'm saying that I didn't bother to look for any more because this is the first time that Abraham makes a covenant that is shown in Scripture. Yeah, that's fine. So we know that there was agreements and covenants and putting the hand on the thigh and other things like that, different things, but those meant they had meaning. And the meaning for the word oath in Daniel, at least, what we have in Daniel, it says oath, and that's where I got the word from. And then we go to Abraham, so you have Daniel speaking about an oath of the covenant with Moses that was written in the book of Moses, and therefore the curse is placed upon us in Daniel 9:11. So there's a second witness right there. Okay, so now we understand not only that God is not super vindictive. He didn't say, I'm going to punish you 7 times more because I'm just going to pile it on you. It's like, no, we had an agreement, and you swore 7 times. We agreed. We made a covenant, and now you have broken that covenant, and therefore you're going to receive 7 times punishment. And don't act like get caught off guard, because the day that we signed this, the day that we made this covenant, while we were at the bottom of Mount Sinai, I gave you I gave you the whole book of Leviticus to read. If you stop reading at verse 14, that's your fault. But all the punishments were written after that. And what we see in history is the punishments were laid out. And God's not a liar. So now I made a statement that there was 2 time prophecies here. Just gonna get my marker here. So what we see is 7 times more. And that's intensity. And then we see 7 times more. Again, that's intensity, more plagues. And when we look at what he says he's going to do, that gives us a clue to what the punishment is. And when he says, I'm going to give you more plagues or more pain or more suffering, then we know that that's physical and natural occurrences. But when he says time, we have to decide whether or not that time actually means time. And so, but the last 2 times it says 7 times. And there's no more added to it. So let's look at a quote from Ellen White from Prophets and Kings, where she speaks about the 25:20 twice, or the 7 times. She doesn't say 20. She doesn't say it, but you'll see what it is.
I had to search for a text during the sermon today.
I know.
People were probably thinking I was texting
It
someone.
looked like you were doing that. You texted somebody home.
Yeah.
I heard a beep or something going on.
I mean, it's good to use the book, the bound cover, but I mean, these things are amazing when you want to find something on the quick.
You're in Prophets and Kings?
Yeah, it's loading right now. I think I got it. I'm not getting it. Let me do it on the computer.
Do you know what page it is? 'Cause we can't-
No, I don't know the page, but I can look it up. When I'm on the computer, I have the Ellen White CD-ROM, and it's much easier than the app.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, if you're not spelling it right, it has all the words that Ellen White used, so you can know that even if she spelled it wrong, you get the right, you'd be able to find it. Israel, Judah, Babylon. 5 hits. Prophets and Kings, page 296. Now, we understand that. See, there's always the big argument. People who like to fight and want to throw out darts and arrows. They always say, "Well, Ellen White never said this." Well, Ellen White didn't say a lot of things the way you want her to say it, but she said it in other ways. If you know how to have ears to hear and eyes to see. So here, when we're in the first 5 books of the Torah, we have the 10 Commandments in what chapter? Exodus chapter what?
20.
Okay, is that the only place we find it?
No.
It's in Deuteronomy, right?
Yeah.
So what we find in Moses' books is that he repeats himself. So if you find something in one book, it doesn't mean that it's not connected to the other book. So in this reference is Deuteronomy, but it's talking about the very same subject matter, which is what is connected to Leviticus 26. But let's read what it says. It says, this prophecy, so when they say that this is, see, one of the arguments too about 25:20 is that it's not a time prophecy, not a prophecy, right? But here Ellen White, we're going to see what this is, but it says, this prophecy. So that's a prophecy. Ellen White, out of Ellen White's mouth. This prophecy,
Where you at?
I'm in Prophets and Kings 296. It says, this prophecy fulfilled in part in the time of Judges. Has a more and complete and literal fulfillment in the captivity of Israel into Assyria. Israel into Assyria and Judah into Babylon.
There's a Y in Assyria.
Yes, there's one R in Israel.
We know what he's saying.
It's easier just to write.
Okay, so we have to ask ourselves a question. What prophecy do we know that has anything to do with Judah going into Babylon and also Assyria going into Israel? Now what is the 25:20? It is a curse for breaking the covenant, right? Now how do you get how do you get the curse? You have to fill the cup full of iniquity first. See, we are given cups. So Israel had a cup. Now there was one cup. Okay, there was one cup at one time. Can someone tell me why there was only one cup? It was one nation. There was 12 tribes. But after Solomon's death, Israel and Judah separated. And so now God is not going to punish one for the other. So they're both getting their things filled up. They're both sinning like crazy. But in Isaiah chapter 7, this is super, super key here. Isaiah chapter 7 is about when Israel decided to be confederate with Assyria and come down and attack Judah. Have you studied that before, Pastor?
Say that again.
In Isaiah chapter 7, when the northern tribe confederated with Syria and was going to come down and attack Jerusalem.
The northern tribe.
The 10 tribes.
With Assyria?
Yes, with Syria. Let's. Okay, listen. This is fantastic. This is what we're going to go to now. We're going to study this out real quick. Okay, so Isaiah chapter 7. Little bit of history here. Oh no. Oh, it's here. Good, because I don't want to have to find that again. Okay, the Ellen White is bad on my phone, but the Bible's perfect on my phone. Okay, so Isaiah. And this is where, so, yeah, this is so amazing. I mean, the Bible is so connected. So Isaiah chapter 7. Now, if you have a Bible that has dates in it or margins, the Isaiah chapter 7 is dated at 742 BC. I'm just going to erase this up here for now. 742 BC is the chapter 7 of Isaiah. Okay. And it says, and it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, the son of, so we have Ahaz. Well, I'm going to put him down because he's part of the southern kingdom. We'll put him geographically correct. So Ahaz is the king of Jerusalem. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's Pekah. It came to pass in the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah,
King of Syria, and
King of
Pekah, the son of Remaliah.
Oh, yeah, wait. Pekah's Israel. Yeah, I knew there was a Pekah. Okay, so Ahaz and Pekah. Yeah, okay, Pekah.
Remaliah was the king of Israel.
Son of Remaliah, who is the king of Israel.
No, Rezin is the king of... Wait. Rezin is the king of Syria. Rezin.
King of
We'll get this
Judah.
figured out. Rezin.
Judah.
Okay, it says, it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah. That's just his grandparents. King of Judah, that Rezin, the king of Assyria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah. So it's Pekah, the son of Remaliah. King of Israel went up toward Jerusalem to war against it, but could not prevail against it. So this is Assyria.
No, it's Syria, not
Syria. So, and then Pekah is Israel.
And it wasn't the king, it was the prince. And I wonder why it was the prince and not the king.
No, I don't think. I think we're reading it too out of context. Watch this. It says, Pekah, the son of Remaliah. So we're talking about Pekah, and he's the son of Remaliah. But Pekah is the subject, and it says, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel. Pekah is the king of Israel. He's the son of Remaliah. When we were talking about Ahaz, it said Ahaz, and it tells about his grandfather, his father, and his grandfather. But Ahaz, the first one, is the king of Judah, and Pekah, who is the son of Remaliah, is the king of Israel. It's a little confusing, but after reading it about 10 times, I'm convinced that Pekah is the son of Remaliah, but Pekah being the subject, the one brought up, he is the one king of Israel. Because it doesn't say Remaliah is the king of Israel. It mentions the son and the father, and then it just says king of Israel. So you've got to understand by the context, what it is. I'm going with Pekah.
May I suggest that
Yes.
you read 2 Kings 15:27?
Can you read it?
Yes. Pekah, the son of Remaliah, became king over Israel.
Right, but we don't know what that date is. At this date.
Signifies the day.
I'm just supporting what you're saying.
Oh, okay.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that it's not written clearly in Isaiah, but in 2 Kings it differentiates, showing that Pekah is the one who became king of Israel.
Right, but Remaliah may have been king before him.
Perhaps.
Yeah. But I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you.
And then in verse 29 it says, in the days of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and took all of these different places.
Yeah. So what happens is, yes.
Also in 2 Kings 16:5, then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel. came up to Jerusalem.
Do you know how long it's been since I've been in a study where the people listening actually has something to add? They actually study the Bible too. That's so nice. And I need correction, if I'm the only one up here. So, but understand this. So these two, these are brothers, Israel and Judah. They're the 12 tribes. And for the first time, they've all sinned. They've been sinning, right? Just filling their cups up. But here when we get to Isaiah chapter 30, or chapter 7, now Pekah is going to do something that has never been done before. God's people are going to fight their own people. Yeah. We're going to have a civil war. So now Israel's going to have a civil war, and God is going to fill their cup up, and we'll see that in a minute. Okay, so going on. And understand this. Here it said Pekah was the king of Israel, but we're going to see in verse 2, he's going to switch it to Ephraim.
That's just a good name.
Can I add something?
Yes.
This matches the time prophecy, the 70-week prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, where it is the stoning of Stephen. It's when the Jews attack their own God's people that you have.
Oh.
Right, that's
Israel stones the prophet.
And what is that? That's the end of probation.
Yes, that's the end of probation for the Jews. So that's the end of the 70 weeks, right there.
Right.
So I'm just saying this as it matches that when God's people
Everything matches.
Each other.
Cup is full. You're done. Wow.
It's not all or nothing. Not everything matches, but
Everything biblical matches. False doctrine doesn't match, but in the Bible, everything matches. That doesn't mean you put things that don't go together, but the things that go together, they go together perfectly.
But it's just really interesting to see that it was the stoning of Stephen that ended the probation there.
And that's exactly where we're at here.
Civil War. People again.
I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off, did I? Or was it? Did I?
No.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay.
He's just doing some parallels.
Yeah, I'm just
Sorry, I'm quick to the jump. I need to,
I'm bolstering some of your.
Yes, praise the Lord. So this is beautiful, and since you haven't studied this before, this is a beautiful thing if you get the whole thing and get it all in one setting. So verse number 2, it was told the house of David, saying, Syria is confederate with Ephraim, and his heart was moved, and the heart of his people as the trees of wood are... I'm sorry. What's going on?
As the trees of wood are moved with the wind.
Oh, I'm so used to stopping at Ephraim. I was going, where's Ephraim? I already read it. Okay, and it was told the house of David, saying, Syria is confederate with Ephraim. I'll just put this up here. So this is also Ephraim, which means that when you look in the Bible and you see Ephraim, it can be referring to either the half tribe of Ephraim or the half tribe of Manasseh, or it can also be speaking about Israel proper.
That's a really important point.
It is.
If you talk with the Mormon church, they will tell you that the book of Ephraim is the book of Mormon.
Oh no.
So you'll read there in is it Isaiah that there are
So these two verses right here, these two verses right here can totally throw that in the water because they're not going to say it's Israel.
That's right.
Yeah, but this is important for Adventists to know because I debated these Mormon missionaries for ages. They were telling me the two sticks. One was the Bible. That's the stick for Judah.
Okay,
the stick
right.
For Ephraim was
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And if you can go back and show that Ephraim is actually Israel, and it's the 10 tribes, it breaks it apart.
Then the Lord said to Isaiah, Go forth now and meet Ahaz, thou and Shear-Jashub thy son, at the end of the conduit of the upper pool in the highway of the fuller's field. There's a huge study in that. That's an amazing little verse right there. Verse 4, And say unto him, Take heed and be quiet, fear not, neither be faint-hearted, for those two tails of these smoking firebrands, for their fierce anger of Rezin with Syria and the son of Remaliah, because Syria and Ephraim the son of Remaliah have taken evil counsel against thee, saying, Let us go against Judah and vex it, and to make a breach therein for us, and set a king in the midst of it, even the son of Tabeel. Thus saith the Lord, It shall not stand, neither shall it come to pass. So here we go into verse 8. Now we're going to get into another time prophecy. And it says, The head of Syria is Damascus. Isaiah, verse 7, 8. The head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And within 65 years. And we all agree a score is 20? So that's 65 years, right? So I'm going to make it easy, and I'm just going to put 65 years. Now, we already established, or I told you, that if you have a marginal reading, and everything in Ussher's chronology is accepted by all the pioneers in Ellen White. There's only one discrepancy, and who found it? William Miller found it. But who did he find it from? Where did he find it from? From Paul.
Paul, that's right. Yeah.
Because so here's the deal. Ussher's chronology, you're aware of that, right? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I think so.
That's where we come to 4004 BC. He charted out the entire Bible so that we had a timeline. And he was Bishop Ussher, so he was a Catholic or a monk. But he was a devout, and God uses the devout. So this Ussher's chronology is like spot on.
And he wrote it in the 1600s.
Now, Ussher said that the time of Judges was about 295 years. But, in fact, you know what? Let's just go ahead and read that. We're going to look at the Midnight, and this is part of the Midnight Cry. This is part of our history. So the Midnight Cry is on tab number... it's tab number 12. Maybe yours is off. Yours will be 12. The Midnight Cry? Okay, if you turn to the second page, if you turn to the next page, it says 6,000 years. And here Miller is going to deal with Ussher. And it says, the period of time allotted for this world at this present time is 6,000 years, at the termination of which commences the great millennial Sabbath, spoken of in Revelation 20, and which will be ushered in by the personal appearing of Christ at his first resurrection. Now, at this time, Miller does not understand that Jesus isn't coming on 1844. So everything he's going to say is going to reference Jesus is coming at the end of the 6,000 years. But what happens at the end of 6,000 years is the judgment, right? We all understand it's a judgment. So it says, according to Ussher's chronology, which is commonly received, the Christian era commenced in the year 4004 BC. So I'm just going to change this to 4004 BC. Okay. But Ussher had lost in the time of the judges 153 years from the division of the land of Canaan to the beginning of Samuel's administration. Because we know once Samuel's administration starts, Saul is made king, and now we're going into 1 Kings, 2 Kings. But before 1 Kings and 2 Kings is Joshua and Judges as we come through the desert wandering, right? And now we're in the Promised Land, and it says he gives 295 years, whereas Paul in Acts 13:20. So this is so amazing because Miller doesn't just do some math and say, oh, I found a mistake. He goes, no, I was reading and Paul found a mistake. But understand this, how often do you think Paul says how many years the dates are in the Bible? I only know of one, and it's this one, and this is the one that God needed to correct the error. So God had Paul write this thousands of years ago so that when Miller found it, he'd say, hey, Miller, Ussher made a mistake. Here's where the mistake's at. It says, Paul in Acts 13:20 give us about the space of 450. From the book of Judges, we obtained 430 years, and Josephus gives us is more of the elders in anarchy before the judges ruled, and added to the 430 to make it 448, which agrees with Paul, supporting him to have spoken in round numbers, because it's in Paul it says gives us about the space of 450, so it's not exactly 450, but rounding it up is it's. But anyway, it says the difference between this time given in Ussher is 153 years. So watch this. We take 4004 BC. We add 153 years to it, and we get 4157. Okay, if we take 6,000, because we're talking about 6,000 years, and we minus 4157, we get 1843. October 22nd, 1844, It was the end of 6,000 years. The completing of 6,000 years was October 22nd, 1844. Everything that God does lines up perfectly.
Amen.
So we have
Time shall be no longer.
So we have a few prophecies that end in October 22nd, 1844. One is the 6,000 years, which is the heavenly week with the millennial Sabbath, right? Then there's the 2450. Well, there's the 2520, which is 677 to 1843. Then there's the 2450, which deals with Jubilees. And you can go back to Pioneer Writings, and even Ellen White, they talk about the Jubilees. And there's, after 49 Jubilees brings you to 1844, and that leaves, and on the Jubilee year, on the 50th year, that's the Jubilee. And what is the Jubilee? It's when all things are returned to their original. Now, what happened at the end of the Dark Ages? We were all in darkness, right? And what's God doing? He's bringing us back through the truths. He's returning us to the Sabbath, to baptism by immersion. He's restoring us to the restoration, which is the Great Jubilee, which is what all the pioneers taught and what Ellen White taught and what we don't teach as a church anymore, but that's the truth. And then we have the 2300 days and the 1335, and there's arguments whether 1335 is before or after, but I think it lands on the day.
70 weeks.
The 70 weeks goes to 34 AD. So, no, the 1290 goes to 1798. So there's about four prophecies, but everything. But if we lined them all up and went 1798 or 1844, all of these prophecies land on the same spots. It means they're connected. So when we start having people teaching futurism, and they say, "Oh yeah, well in 1260 days from 2001, yeah, Jesus is coming." Well, guess what? You can't take one prophecy and put it in the future unless you take all the prophecies connected to it. So unless you take the entire history of the prophecy as a set and move them all forward, then you're breaking every single prophecy because they all land on each other. So
1335 will take you.
let's go back to Isaiah chapter 7. So it says, "Within 65 years shall Ephraim no longer be a people." Okay, so watch this. 742 BC, 65 years. If we add 65 to 742, well, actually, we minus it. We subtract it. 742 is the date for the chapter 7 of Isaiah. That's when the king of Ahaz was attacked by Pekah and Rezin. So if we take 65 years from 742 as we're going backwards in BC, it comes to 677 BC. This is the date of Judah's captivity, but it's said within this time. So within 742, we'll just say that's 742, and here's 677. Within this time, somewhere in here, Israel will no longer be a people, and they were destroyed. It was 19 years later, 723. So now, if God's punishment is a 2520, and if God says, now you're to no longer be a people in 723, this cup is full, and if that's a 2520, then let's take this number and put it in the 2520. If we go 723, and we go 12, let's go halfway. If we go 1260 years, sorry, I just keep on my brain and my hand are not working together. If we go 1260 years, it brings us to 538. And from 538 to 1798 is another 1260. Now this also matches up with, now watch this. You brought in Stephen being stoned to close of probation. This is their close of their probation, but watch this. When this 1260, the first 1260 matches up with Christ for the 3.5 years he preached, and then he was crucified, and then at the end of his, probation was over. The Jews were no longer God's people. Oh, you're on the phone.
No.
Oh.
No, sorry.
Oh.
I'm just holding it and listening to you. I'm on the phone.
I'm sorry, it's not drawn very well up here.
Anyways, I am totally lost. So 723. Why in the world do you add 222, what is it?
Because you go from BC to AD.
I'll explain that in 1 second. Let me just write this out. Let me write this out clear.
1844, why is it ending in 1798?
There's two of them.
Didn't tell you about
This is we're talking about Pekah.
25,
Remember, they both have 2 cups. Watch this. Who had a covenant with God that swore 7 times, "We'll be your God and you'll be your people"? All 12 tribes. They all are under covenant. But when they separated, they now both are going to be punished on how they continue on with the covenant. They were all up almost to the rim. But when Pekah decided he was going to go and side with the enemy and fight Judah, God says, "You're no longer going to be a people." So when he says you're no longer going to be a people, now he's going to lay the curse upon them. Now you've done it. Now you're going to get the full brunt of my promise in Leviticus that I'm going to punish you 7 times for this. And so when they received their 25-20, if you split it in half, 1260, which is 25-20, the middle of it hits 538, and you have the papacy. And what you have is 1,260 years of paganism before we went to Christianity, and then we have 538 years of papalism. It's the 2 desolating powers spoken of in Daniel. The 2 desolations, the desolating powers. Paganism and papalism. But here's the thing. We don't care about that, though, because the promise isn't through the line of Israel. The promise is through the line of Judah. And when Judah's, when they start theirs, watch this. Remember, it's within 65 years, and if we took 65 years, came to 677, that's when their 25-20 began. So theirs starts a little bit later in 677, and it goes to 1844. But what's happening here? We're watching that they were scattered. In fact, it says in Leviticus, it says that they were scattered, and that the reason why they were scattered is because they wouldn't let the land rest. Right. And it says, when you're not on the land, my land will rest because you won't be on it, right? Right. That's in Leviticus 26. That's part of the covenant. You don't want to keep the Sabbath. So what did God do? He kept the covenant. God kept his side of the bargain. He says, if you don't, I will. And he did. But we're pretending like this didn't happen, or this is not a time prophecy, or God did not inflict any punishment. But God did inflict punishment, and that's why Daniel was there. So,
Well, give him a chance. Let's make sure he understands what you've said.
are you following me along so far?
I don't think he is.
Okay. All right. So, now, here's the thing. In verse 8, it didn't say anything about Judah being not a people. So we have this date here that ends in 677, and we know that Israel was in between that date, and so it's 723 when it actually happened, and so that's when their punishment begins. But we didn't say 677 in the verse, so let's find it. So let's just keep reading. It says, we'll read 8 again. For the head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. Within 65 years, Ephraim shall be broken, and shall not be a people. This is Isaiah chapter 7, verse 8. And here's where, brother.
I just showed him, yeah.
Sometimes less is more. Okay, so within 65 years shall Ephraim be broken, that it be not a people. You no longer hear of Israel as a people anymore after this. You hear about Samaritans. And what was the first thing they did? I'm sure you know what the first thing they did. When the Israel stepped away from Judah,
They asked for a sign.
they made 2 golden calves.
One in Dan and one in
Somewhere. But the thing is, and the reason why they wanted to come down and take Jerusalem is because Jerusalem had the temple of God. And they had 2 calves. And they're going like, we're not getting enough respect here. We want the temple too. But what happened was, God's going, no calved worshipers are going to take my temple. I'm sorry, this ain't going to happen. Hey, so Isaiah, hey, tell Ahaz, don't worry about it. They're not going to do anything. They're coming down here, but don't worry about it. So we already read that. He said, don't worry about them coming. But it says, so then we learned, and I talked about it today, that we know that the Samaritans are the Israelites because the Samaritan woman said our father dug that well, right? So it says, the next verse tells us that. And the head of Ephraim is Samaria. And the head of Samaria is Remaliah's son. If you will not believe, surely you shall not be established. Yep. Now, here's a prophecy about 65 years, about the beginning of the end of Israel. That's a huge, huge, huge prophecy. And it tells you the date of its beginning. And then it says, but then we have it ending, the full 65 years ends in 677, but we haven't put that on Judah yet. But, I mean, Isaiah chapter 7 is when God's saying this is it. Isaiah chapter 7 is the end of his forbearance. This is where he deals out his punishment. But understand this, what I'm going to read next is God saying, not only did I put this in Isaiah's writings, but now I'm going to endorse it. And you will take heed to what we just read because it's very important. In fact, it's so important, I'm going to put Jesus' name on it. So what does he say? It says, moreover, the Lord spoke to Ahaz, saying, ask of thee a sign of the Lord thy God. Ask it either in the depth or the height above. But Ahaz says, I will not ask, neither will I tempt the Lord. And he said, hear ye now, O house of David. Is it a small thing for you to weary men, but you weary me also, weary my God also? Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. A sign for what? A sign that within 65 years Israel will no longer be a people. A sign that within 65 years something else is going to happen. Wherefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Butter and honey shall he eat, that he may know to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the child shall know to refuse evil and choose the good, the land that thou abhorrest shall be forsaken of both her kings. There, now we have both kings. Now we just brought in Judah. Before the child grows up, this land is going to be devoid of both her kings. So we were already told there was within 65 years. We weren't told that Judah was going down, but now the Bible says, no, Judah's going down also. And he goes down in 677, right on time, exactly in the Bible, exactly as history. Everything lines up to a T. It cannot be argued. So Isaiah chapter 7 is the beginning of both of these 2520s. And so let's just look at what Ellen White said in early writings on the chart, because I want to look at the word scattering and gathering.
74, I think it is.
Yeah,
Early
page
writings,
74.
74.
Early writings 74.
You want early writing?
Okay, so I'm going to read this one more time before I lose it. It says, this prophecy fulfilled part in the time of Judges, when there was 7 years in the time of, they were enslaved for 7 years by the Midianites, literal years, a small punishment. But God's increasing it. So he says, you know what? You didn't like 7 regular years? Now we're going to prophetic years. So then we get the final 2520. And in that final 2520, it says what it is. In fact, before we go there, I want to go back to Leviticus chapter 26, and I want to look at the third 7 times, because I'm saying that this what I'm saying is that this is the judges' captivity that Ellen White spoke about. So now I want to prove from the Bible that there's the connection here. So if we go to Leviticus 26, verse 26, 24. Okay, and here is God. This is God giving us the stipulations to the oath, to the covenant. And he says, if ye will not be reformed by me, by these things, but will walk contrary unto me, then will I also walk contrary unto you, and will punish you 7 times for your sins. It's times without a more, it's meaning time prophecy. But here's what it says. It says, I will bring a sword upon you. This is an invading kingdom. I will bring a sword upon you, and you shall avenge the quarrel of my covenant. And when ye are gathered together in your cities, and when were they gathered into cities? When did the Jews have cities? When they were in the promised land. Because they were only in the desert before that, right? So now we have Jewish cities. And God's saying, if you will, when you get to the point where you have cities, and I will bring a sword upon you, it says, and you will be gathered together in your cities, I will send a pestilence among you. That's not necessarily captivity, but it's another punishment. And ye shall be delivered into the hand of your enemy. That's when you're being put into slavery. You're being put into subjection. So, when they were in the land having cities, in the covenant, God foresaw them having cities. He said, when you're in your cities, I'm going to bring a sword upon you, and you're going to be taken captive by your enemies. And they spent, and when we read the book of Judges, and Ellen White said, this prophecy had its fulfillment in the book of Judges. I still have it here. This prophecy, filled in part in the time of Judges, had met a more complete and literal fulfillment in the captivity of Israel into Assyria and Judah into Babylon. And Israel going into Assyria, we're talking. I'm saying that this prophecy in Kings is talking about the 25:20 or the 7 times. But we're looking at when we're looking at Revelation chapter 7, we're looking at Assyria going in and being confederate with Syria and going into Assyria, and then we have this. It's the same thing. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm so confused.
Okay.
Are you saying Israel has confederated with Syria?
Yes.
Not Assyria.
But when they went into captivity, watch this. So these guys are working together, right? Now these names change. This is like Iran, Iraq kind of area, right? The whole northern area of the Islamic people.
Is Iran? Syria is different.
Right, but they switched. Just like Nineveh used to be separate from Babylon, but then became a part of Babylon. So there's movements going on. But when we look at it right here, watch this. When she says in this right here, when she says Assyria, she says, this prophecy fulfilled in part in the time of Judges has met a more complete and literal fulfillment in the captivity of Israel into Assyria. Now, the only time that Israel was taken into Assyria is when they confederated, after they confederated with this, and God said, you're not your people. That's when they were taken to Assyria as slaves. Because Israel, there was no other time that Israel went into Assyria. So Assyria, Syria, the Bible is saying, and it could be one of those things where in the Bible it says Noe and N-O-E, and in the Old Testament it says N-O-A-H.
No, those are two different places. Syria and Assyria are two different.
I understand that, but there's only one Israel, and they only went into captivity once. And they went into captivity, according to Ellen White here in Prophets and Kings, into Assyria. But Isaiah chapter 7 says that they were confederate with Syria. And if you look at the history, what happened was when the Assyrians could not take Jerusalem because God wasn't allowed it to happen, they said, you know what? We'll take you. They turned on their confederates and they took them at that point. That's when God says,
Syria took Israel?
When they confederated, they were one army together. And they went down to attack. They went down to attack Jerusalem. And God says, no, that's not going to happen. He says, within 65 years, you're not going to be people. So they were mingling with the northern kingdoms. Now at this time, maybe it was 19 years later, in 723, that they actually were no longer a people. So within 19 years, whoever they were confederate with might have changed from Assyria to Assyrians or whatever. But there was still, they were taken by.
No, Syria never turned around and attacked Israel. Assyria did, and that's written in.
So you're saying Assyria never did, but Assyria did.
Assyria did.
Okay.
Assyria was led by Shalmaneser III.
Right.
Shalmaneser III.
And hold on, just a second. Where's Tilgath-Pileser in this? I remember somebody had mentioned it already. Do you remember Tilgath-Pileser?
It was
Okay, your time, because I'm trying to sort this out because you're straightening me out. I'm trying to get this.
Yeah.
So Shalmaneser was the one who took them to Assyria.
Shalmaneser, and the Bible records this in Kings, but it also is recorded in archaeological records. Shalmaneser has made I think it was a prism, and he set it up, and he talks about how he went through and attacked the northern tribes, and he mentions the cities that he goes through and attacks, and he overcomes them and overcomes them.
So he must have overcome Syria as well then. Well, maybe. We don't know for sure. That's not.
So
it's
he goes all the way through, and
Okay.
he comes right to the gates of Jerusalem. Now, when he comes to Jerusalem, is it Hezekiah that is king at that time when Shalmaneser comes through? I think it's Hezekiah. So Shalmaneser comes against Jerusalem. And as the army is coming to Jerusalem, they're defeating all of the cities of Judah on their way to Jerusalem. They come all the way down to Jerusalem. They surround Jerusalem. And Hezekiah commissions that all of the springs around the city is stopped up. And in order to get water into the city, he builds a tunnel
Oh, okay.
called Hezekiah's Tunnel. And
Wow, see, I missed this whole. I totally missed this. I've read the Bible, but I've never heard this. This is good.
this was an engineering
They've
feat
even found
because they had to build the tunnel by digging from both sides.
Oh, okay. And they had to meet.
And they had to meet in the
Right.
middle. And they only
And when you hit a rock,
They were
you tend to
only
turn
off a
left
few
or right.
they were only off a few inches.
Wow.
And they were able to complete the tunnel in time before Shalmaneser's army
Praise the Lord.
came,
Yeah.
against
And of course, that was the hand of the Lord. And the hand of the Lord was helping them not be more than a few inches off, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
So let me say this in summation. So we know that at 723, these guys were confederated. In 723, it says they were taken by the Assyrians. So I was conflating the two, but there's still two events that happened. I just conflated the two because it's off by a couple letters.
Sure.
And so that's my mistake. But otherwise, the rest of this is still solid biblical history.
Okay, so Syria and Assyria, that's separate.
Yeah.
Um,
And thank you for correcting me on that.
yeah, no problem. They sound almost identical. So.
This has got to hurt your eyes. I'm looking at it going like, man, it's confusing me.
Yeah.
But when you work through it, if you, yeah.
Now Ahaz is king of Judah during the time that Syria confederates.
Yeah, and then it says, tell Ahaz to don't worry about it. They're not going to come down and get you.
And Assyria attacks in the same year that.
No, Assyria attacks 723 within 65 years. So what we know what the date was.
65.
No, it's not 65. It's within 65 years. Shall Israel not be a people? It doesn't tell you the date. It just says between this time and 65 years, Israel's no longer a people. And it doesn't say anything about Judah until after it explains about the child. And it says, but before the child grows up, the land will be void of both of her kings. So God's giving you the points of the beginning of the downfall of both kingdoms. And of course, 677 is when there was no longer, I mean, we had some kings afterwards, but the pride of our power is broken. The curse has already been established that I am now putting you under the punishments that we promised. We agreed on it out in the desert. Well, I didn't agree. My grandfather did. Well, too bad.
Now, how does 2,520 years connect with the judgments of Israel and Judah?
Well, because let's deal with Judah first. If you go to Leviticus, on the chart it says here, it takes you to it. It says Leviticus 26, 28 to 34. So let's look at Leviticus 26, 28 to 34. And this is the final 25:20, the point of controversy. It says, I will walk contrary unto you also in fury. I will chastise you 7 times for your sins.
Repeat the verse again.
That's Leviticus 26, 28.
Thank you.
Okay, but when we look at what the punishment is, and we look at history and find out when these things occurred, we're going to find it happened exactly at 677. After 65 years from 742, it lines up perfectly. It says, then I will walk contrary unto you also in fury. I will chastise you 7 times for your sins. And you shall eat the flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters shall you eat. Now, at what times did God's people ever eat their children?
Under siege.
When they were under siege.
Jeremiah.
Great
Jeremiah.
controversy.
And when were they under siege?
The destruction of Jerusalem, the temple.
The destruction of Jerusalem? But wasn't Jerusalem was destroyed twice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When was the first time?
AD 70.
Right here.
607 BC.
That was
But before 607, Manasseh was taken captive because God was saying, I'm going to take away your kingship. But then he repented, right? And because of his repentance, not only did he allow King Manasseh to live and to be forgiven, the worst king ever, by the way, just showing you how forgiving God is. He forgave Manasseh, but at that point he also says, I'm going to go ahead and let you keep the kingdom for a little bit longer. But you know what they didn't do? They never let the land rest.
Right.
So let's read on. So they ate their children. We know that happened in the siege of Babylon. Verse 30 now. And I will destroy your high places, cut down your images, cast your carcasses upon the carcass of your idols, and my soul shall abhor you. I will make your cities waste. So are we talking, what cities? We're talking about the Jews, right? What's their city? It's Jerusalem. So we're talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, which the whole books of Nehemiah and Ezra are trying to rebuild. So we wouldn't have a book of Nehemiah or Ezra if God didn't fulfill this prophecy. It's not an intensity. This is a prophecy in Leviticus 26. I will make your cities waste, and I will bring your sanctuaries into desolation. When did God remove the Jews out of his sanctuary and destroy the temple? We're talking about Solomon's temple. When the Babylonians came in 607. Because of this, God is fulfilling his promise. And how is he doing it? On time. He's doing it on time because it is a time prophecy. And it says, I will make your cities waste and bring your sanctuaries into desolation, and I will not smell your sweet odors. Now, we could argue. Do you have a question? Or is you just holding your hand up?
Yeah, I have a question. Verse 29, you tied to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Is that correct?
I said that.
No.
Is that correct?
No. Any time that the Jews were surrounded, they had all kinds of terrible things happen. I believe that's when they were selling dung. Pigeon dung was in 70 AD. But the only times that Jerusalem is mentioned as being sieged in a big long siege where it goes so bad that they're going to eat their children would have been either 70 AD or Babylon, but we don't have people eating their children in 70 AD. We have them eating pigeon dung. But in the Babylonian captivity, they're stuck there.
Okay,
but we can...
talking about Babylon.
Right, 677 and 2520. So but here's the thing. If you wanted to argue that, this could all be the 70 AD, we're going to remove that option for you. So it says, I will destroy your high places, cut down your images, your carcasses. Okay, verse 31. And I will make your cities waste and bring your sanctuaries into desolation. And I will not smell your smell your savor of your sweet odors. That means the ministry's over for now, boys and girls. The temple's gone. You're going to Babylon. You're not going to be giving me any more offerings. Verse 32, and I will bring the land into desolation, and your enemies which shall dwell therein shall be astonished at it. And I will scatter you among the heathen, and I will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. This happened in 607, but the beginning of the punishment started in 677 with Manasseh. But God is progressively adding more punishments to you because you're not listening. He doesn't give it all on the first day. You might get beat up today and smacked around tomorrow and you get whipped on Tuesday. But all these things are going to happen in this, what he promised you. But it says, then shall the land enjoy her Sabbath, as long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land. And even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbaths. Now here when it says, you shall be in your enemy's land, that's captivity. In Jerusalem, when they fled to the mountains, and they were not killed, but they were not taken captive. They just fled Jerusalem, and no Christians died in the siege of what was the Roman emperor? Titus. I was thinking Tiberius and Titus. So when he came in, all the Christians fled the city. They might have fled into their enemy's land, but they weren't taken captive. And then verse 35 says, and as long as it lieth desolate, it shall rest, because you did not rest in your it did not rest in your Sabbaths when you dwelt there. And also if we come down,
It's talking about those who are left in the land. Because Nebuchadnezzar left a number of people in the land to keep it. The poor.
Okay.
That's verse 36.
Okay. Well, that's enough to point out that there was a that there was a desolation of the temple, a desolation of the city, a captivity, of people eating their children. When did this happen? It happened during the Babylonian captivity, okay? Or the siege, not the captivity. So now, let's go to... Where was I going?
So I see how it's connecting to the Babylonian captivity of Judah.
Right,
That's clear.
right.
That seems like a solid connection.
Oh, I want to go to Ellen White now. But go ahead. I'm just saying that out loud for everyone else.
Yeah, I've been trying to find it. But
So
I can't find it on my phone.
now I'm trying to understand how does it connect past the Babylonian captivity.
No.
Oh, how do we? Because Babylon was a punishment. Why do we go 2,520 years past? Right. Well, let me ask you this. Here's another good question. When we
Say that again. 2,520 years past what?
from the beginning of the captivity, it's 2,520 years of oppression because they broke the covenant. And Daniel's praying. When Daniel's praying in chapter 9, he says, "I recognize." 9:11, he says, "I recognize that we have broken the oath and we are under the curse that is written in the book of Moses." Daniel knows he's under the curse. He knows he's in the middle of a prophecy. And he wants to know how long. Yeah. And so he asks God, "Lord, how long will the sanctuary that's already destroyed and the host be trampled underfoot?" And he says, "Under 2,300 days, then the sanctuary will be cleansed, or it will be restored." Now, that's many, many, many years after Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. So when God gives a prophecy, the people can still come back and build Jerusalem again and have Herodes and all this, but they're still under that 2,300 years before it's going to be restored. And they're still under Grecian rule and papal rule and pagan rule. And so God's people have never been a sovereign nation ever again until God establishes his church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, at the end of the scattering.
Did I write this date down wrong? Is it set 607 or 677?
No, 677 is when Manasseh was taken captive because of all the evil he did.
607 BC is when Babylon.
That's when the rest of the people, and that's when the temple was destroyed and the city was wasted because they...
You go 2,520 years from there.
No,
607.
677.
25,
Because this is when... See, here's the thing. God is punishing you to try to get you to submit and to obey. And so even when he says all these 27 times, he's going, "If for all this you will not listen." So when he started the punishment with Manasseh in 677, and the first time that they took the king captive and removed him from Jerusalem, and then he repented, and God says, "I'm going to go ahead and restore you because I accept your repentance." And so God was ready to punish, and then he repented, and just like with Nineveh, God was going to punish, but they repented. God says, "Okay, I'm going to stay the punishment back a little bit," but we've already started the clock. Yep. The date already started the day I had Nebuchadnezzar come down and get you. So now the clock has started, but for the next 70 years, they still wouldn't let the land rest. They didn't learn anything. So God forgave Manasseh, but he didn't forgive all the rest of the Jews. So Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, Zedekiah, they're refusing everything Jeremiah says. And the whole book of Isaiah is God telling the people, listen, God's about to put his final punishment on you people if you don't stop and repent. And then Jeremiah, they didn't listen to Isaiah, and then Jeremiah comes after Isaiah, right? And what does he say? You guys didn't listen to Isaiah. Do you know what Isaiah said? Isaiah said the Babylonians are going to come down here and take you captive. You are no longer going to be the prize of the earth. You're no longer going to be the chosen people looking like the glory that you are with the temple and the city and all that. I'm going to take all of that away from you. Yep. And they didn't listen to Jeremiah, and guess what happened? God came down and destroyed the temple and destroyed the city. They had been told, the whole book of Isaiah is saying, watch out, the 2520 is coming if you don't start doing what you're supposed to be told. Jeremiah is going, you didn't listen to Isaiah, you're going into this. Yep. There's no escape now. Now you're going to be captive no matter what. And so God was trying not to give them this prophecy. This isn't something he wanted to plan, and it was also conditional. If you hadn't filled your cup, you didn't have to drink it. So now let's see what Ellen White has to say.
Here's what she says on this gathering.
Oh, you want? Go ahead.
Yeah, it says, September 23, 1853, the Lord showed me that he has stretched out his hand the second time to recover the remnant of his people, and that efforts must be redoubled in this gathering time. In the scattering, Israel was smitten and torn, but now in the gathering time, God will heal and bind his people. In the scattering, efforts made to spread the truth, but little effect accomplished, but little or nothing. But now in the gathering, when God has set his hand to gather his people, efforts to spread the truth will have their designed effect. All should be united and zealous in the work, and I saw that it was wrong for any to refer to the scattering, for example, to govern us now in the gathering. For if it was God should do no more for us than now than he did then, Israel would never have been gathered. I have seen the 1843 chart was directed by the hand of the Lord, that it should not be altered. The figures were as he wanted them, that his hand was over a mistake in some of the figures, so that none could see it until his hand was removed.
So let's look at a couple of clues here. Here's Ellen White saying, I know where we're at right now. We are in a transition at this point in time. We are going from the scattering into the gathering. Don't anybody compare this side of this argument with this side of this argument. If God never did any more than this, we would never be gathered. But now God is going to gather a people and he's going to do the work. And what happens at this point? This is when God establishes the Seventh-day Adventist Church. God is saying, I am done scattering Israel. Now I'm gathering it. But the Bible says in Leviticus that if you don't walk after me and you don't listen to me, I will punish you 7 times and I will scatter you. The scattering began in the time of Babylon, and God has been scattering them the whole time. And even if they're back in Jerusalem and they're not being scattered the whole time, it's just like if God says, I'm going to punish you with a bunch of lashes. Well, once you get those lashes, you don't get them every day. So there's events that are going to happen within what he said is going to happen. They didn't eat their children for the whole time, but they ate their children during the siege. And then the temple was destroyed. That only happened at the time it took for them to knock all the building over. And then the city was destroyed. So it doesn't happen the whole entire time, but these are the events that are going to happen within the time. And then Ellen White says, now that we've gotten to the point of 1843, we're now transitioning from the scattering to the gathering. So there's only one scattering in the Bible. And that's the one that God promised us if we would not obey him. He says, I will scatter you 7 times for your sins. So that's what we're dealing with. And Ellen White didn't say 25-20. She said scattering and gathering. In Prophets and Kings, she said this prophecy, which had its fulfillment in the time of Judges, also had a more complete and literal fulfillment in the captivity of Israel into Assyria and Judah into Babylon. But the only prophecies that put Judah into Babylon and Assyria into Judah, or Assyria, is the 25-20. There is no other prophecies that bring us to that point. And then when we go to the point where it actually happens in Isaiah chapter 7, which is dated at 742 BC, we find that it exactly fits that if we go 65 years, it said 65 years, that brings us to this point, which is Judah's end. But within this time, Israel ended. So Israel did end, and it was no longer a people. And Judah became the thing. So, look, there's no more to this. There's no feast keeping added onto it. There's no Holy Spirit. There's no false doctrine in any of this. This is just history. And it's Adventist history. It's our foundations. Right. It's the first angel's message. This chart, there was 300 of these made. There was 300 Adventist ministers. This chart is the only tool besides the Bible that they had. And they went, and every minister had it. They went to the entire world, mission station, 1 foot on the land, 1 foot on the sea, with the little book open in his hand. God sent out his messengers, and this chart and this message went to the entire earth. This is the first angel. Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. But you can't prove that number unless you want to go through. But let's start easy. Let's start with Daniel. And then we'll go through Daniel 7 and Daniel 8. And let's put in Revelation. And I'll just show you some interesting things about this chart here. And this will also show you something about your Bible that you probably didn't know. So, what does the dragon represent in Revelation chapter 12? Well, it says Satan, the big red dragon, right? But he's also going to kill the man-child, so he represents who? Rome. But he represents more than that. Because if we look at this, He's a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, with crowns upon their heads. Now, what are crowns? Those are kingdoms. But now, Daniel and Revelation are the same book, right? So this one doesn't have any beast in it. Daniel 2 has no beast. Doesn't have to. Daniel 2 is about metal. But Daniel 7 has beast. So we have beast. And then in Daniel 8 we have beast. You know the difference between these beasts and these beasts?
Clean versus unclean sanctuary.
Sort of. See, these are sacrificial beasts. These are supposed to be clean beasts. But this one has 2 horns that are unequal. And this one has a single horn. So they're still not fit for certain. They're still not. They're not perfect. They're not good enough to be sacrificed, but they are of the breed of sacrificial animals. So that's the correct answer, though. That these ones are like pagan beasts. This is like sort of whatever. But if we look at this says on the chart, it says pagan Rome, and we just said that we recognize the dragon as pagan Rome, right? And right here it says pagan Rome. But this beast right here only has 1 head, but he has 7 horns or 10 horns. So these are the same beast. But watch, where's the other horns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's the 4 heads of the beast that came up out of the water. Because even though there was Alexander or whatever, the Bible doesn't say that a leopard came up with 1 head and then split into 4. No, when God is talking in Daniel 7, he says the leopard had 4 heads. He's not dealing with Alexander. He's representing this beast as having 4 heads. So when we count the heads, we have 7 heads, 10 horns, and these crowns show that these are not just heads; these are kingdoms, because kings have crowns. No one else does. So this is saying that the great dragon of Revelation not only represents Rome, it represents the whole pagan history.
The combination of all.
It's the kingdoms of the earth, and who's ruling the kingdoms of the earth? Satan. So it's the great red dragon.
May I add something?
Yes.
That you may have never seen, and that is the placement of the crowns, because the crowns placement changes between Revelation 12 and Revelation 13, and there's a reason for it. In Revelation chapter 12, the crowns are where?
Oh no, tell me.
On the heads.
Okay.
In Revelation 13, the crowns move from the heads, and the crowns
On the horns.
are on the horns.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
Now, why is that? The crowns not only indicate a nation that's ruling, the crowns also indicate the time period that that it's talking about. So when the crowns are on the heads, it's talking about the time period
of the originals.
Of the
before the 10 divisions.
Of the pagan Roman Empire.
Right.
When the crowns move to the horns, it is now the time period of the horns.
The 10 kings.
Which is the papal
Papal.
empire.
Good point.
Oh, right, because the little horn, and then look what they do here. They put the head on the horn, on the crown.
Indicates the time period, even though the beasts look identical. There's 7 heads and 10.
But watch this. Each one of these ones were sovereign nations. So you have Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, pagan. We don't have the papacy represented here. So when you put the crown down here on the horn, then so nobody gets more than 1 horn. But they all get get more than 1 crown, but they all got a crown. The papacy is not represented here, but where the papacy is represented at, he's the one wearing the crown. Agreeing with what you were saying. Yeah. But this right here, when Ellen White said that God's hand was in the making of this chart, it's not just saying that God helped some guy with his artwork because his hand was stiff. It's saying that God was inspiring the mind of this person. And we were reading earlier today, before you got here, about in Daniel 8 and 12, where it says that the one who was speaking was between the banks of the Uli. And then he was in between the 2 banks in chapter 12. But in that one it says he was in white linen, so we recognize that, well, this is Christ because he's the one who walks on water. So, why I brought that up, I don't know. I had a point. But it's just God is intimately in the prophecies, the promises, the punishments, the obedience, the blessings and the cursings. The first 13 verses of Leviticus 26 says, I'm going to do everything for you. I'm going to make sure you never have to do a rain dance. You're going to get water in due season. Your crops are going to be so good that when you plant on the 7th year, it won't only go through the 8th year, it will go to the 1st year of the next cycle of 7. So, chapter 26 of Leviticus has lots of names. It's the scattering and the gathering. It's the blessings and the cursings. It's the covenant.
Indignation.
Indignation there. But that chapter is the pinnacle. That's the contract for every other thing we talk about. Because the contract is our agreement with God. And if God doesn't have a people, then who are we? And what does any of this matter? We're just a Philistine if we're not one of God's people. So,
Can you also share about Habakkuk too?
okay. So I want to do it from, can we do it from the Ellen White and Great Controversy?
Yeah, you have it.
What was it? 3 what? You wrote down the date or the thing, didn't you? You've got a dog ear here. It might be it. No, it's 340 or 390 or something.
I thought it was 3.
You wrote it down.
What's the words?
If we read Habakkuk 2, we recognize that there's going to be confrontation. And what is the confrontation going to be? What's going to be on whatever Habakkuk's talking about. So let's see what Habakkuk's talking about. We'll look at it in 1 second.
390.
Okay, let's do this real quick. We're going to read Habakkuk, then we'll read what Ellen White says about Habakkuk. So, now understand this. We're all aware that there's a controversy over this 2520, right? And there's very heated on a lot of anger, and this a lot of people don't even understand it. They're arguing whether it's a noun or a verb, and that has nothing to do with anything. Has nothing to do with anything. In fact, for a noun and a verb, how does Jeremiah use the grammar of the Hebrew to decide that 3 baskets means 3 days for the baker and the butcher? He doesn't. It's when God's speaking prophecy, He uses whatever words He wants, and He doesn't care if it's a noun or a verb or whatever else like that. And to say that everywhere else in the Bible where it says time, times, and half a time, that always means something. But here, when it says 7 times, it doesn't mean anything here. Why doesn't it mean anything here? There's something they don't want to see or don't want to accept, but the pioneers all accepted it, and it is part of the first angel's message, because everything on this chart is the first angel's message. This is the first angel's message.
You met Joseph,
Joseph.
Jeremiah, right?
Yeah,
Joseph,
Joseph.
Jeremiah, not Joseph.
Right.
The 3, the
You
bakers.
said Jeremiah.
With the
Oh, well, Jeremiah might have had a dream. I'm not going to throw him out. I like Jeremiah.
I have one comment after you read that.
Okay, so we're going to look at Habakkuk first. Okay, chapter 2 and verses 1 through 4. And we really need to pay attention to verse 4, because verse 4 is saying, you know what, if you really want to attain the goal that you're looking for, then you have to obey verse 4. Because we're all trying to get to heaven by righteousness by faith, right? But that's not, you don't get righteous by faith by studying the 1888 message. You know how Abraham was declared righteous?
God, he believed God.
And he took his son up on the hill, and he left the village. How did Noah gain righteousness?
Built a boat.
He built a boat. You know what? The way that you get righteousness is not studying about righteousness.
You do it.
You do what God asks you to do, because He's not going to ask you to do what He asked her to do. Our obedience to God is based upon our personal life with Christ. And even if the church is all on doing one thing, they're having a Revelation seminar, you should be a part of it. But that might not be your duty. He might have something that He has you want you to do. And I have a great example. Here's my parable.
Can you say that again? What did you just say?
I said, if the church is having a Revelation seminar, you should help out with that. But that might not be the thing that God has specifically for you to do, because His job's for all of us that I won't give to everyone. So here's my thing. I say, look, Lord. Oh, Lord, look at these benches, man. I spent like 9 months on each one of these. See this river here? I have made some of the most beautiful benches you have ever seen. You know why? Because I want people to look at the river and look at your nature and see you, God. Look at these beautiful benches. Aren't they nice? And the Lord's going, yeah, but Rich, I need a bridge because we can't get to the other side of the river. And so what do I say? Oh, Lord, I'd love to build you some more benches. See, we all want to do that. We'll do what we want to do, but God has things that may not be as pleasant or in our wheelhouse. But we need to be willing to do whatever God calls us to do. Now, it's not a popular thing to go anywhere and share truths. I'm just sharing the Bible. I'm just studying Isaiah. I'm just studying Daniel. All I'm doing is sharing history and the truth. But I'm going to be attacked everywhere I go because this is an unpopular truth. And it doesn't matter where. And all their arguments when they want to argue against it, they want to argue about noun and verb. It never even crossed my mind to even worry about that argument because everything else in the Bible all points in the same direction. The fact that we have the book of Ezra and Nehemiah would never have happened had God not punished Israel and sent them into Babylon. Everything that God promised to do, He has done. Everything is recorded. He does nothing unless He reveals it to His prophets. And what we should be doing, instead of trying to pick a side and figure out who's going to argue and fight on whatever, we should come together and study it out and see what more we can learn because God is adding more truth every single day. Amen. So, and let me say this. Anybody on this side of the argument that is willing to study and not be antagonist against it has no animosity to those people who hate us for saying truth. When I go to share with someone else, I don't do it because I want to battle with them. I want to enlighten them. I want to share some truth with them. But they don't want to hear it, and they think I'm a divider and I'm a divisive, or I'm going to bring in feast days and no Holy Spirit and all that stuff. It has nothing to do with truth. This doesn't have a connected chain to something else. This is just Bible history. You know what it is? This is the Advent message. Fear God and give Him glory, for the hour of His judgment has come. How do you know that? Because all this history testifies to it. So where are we at?
You wanted to read the Bible.
Oh, yeah, okay, Habakkuk, okay. So Habakkuk 2, chapter 1 says, or chapter 2, verse 1, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon a tower, and will watch and see what He will say unto me, what I shall answer when I am reproved. So when I'm standing on the wall being a watchman for God, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, people are going to come and reprove me for telling the truth. So what am I supposed to do when they come? Now understand this, I'm making it personal, but Habakkuk's going to explain exactly who we're talking about. He says, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that they may read that run that readeth it. For the vision, these are the visions of Daniel and John, or whatever. For the vision, at that time John wasn't here, so he's talking about Daniel's vision. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end, at the time of the end, when the little book is opened, at the end, it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it will not tarry. Now, when in history did we ever had a tarrying?
1843.
Wait a second. In 1843, did we take the vision and place it upon tables? I don't like this. Sounds like fulfilled prophecy. It's really bothering me. But now let's look at verse 4. So we know that what we're supposed to be doing is not what we're not supposed to be doing is kicking people out of the church for having a chart. What we're supposed to be doing is setting up the chart and teaching from it and making the vision plain that those that read it might run with it, and that it will not lie, and though it tarry, wait for it. But so if we're not doing that, then that means we're going to have a little bit of an attitude problem, right? So let's read what verse 4 says. It says, behold, his soul which is lifted up and is not upright in him. It says, behold, his soul. It's talking about who reproves me. When the guys are reproving me, make it plain upon tables so that he can run and let him see the truth. And it says, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by their faith. And so what he's actually saying here is, do you want to know what a definition of justification by faith is? It's giving the three angels messages. Amen. Because this is the first angel's message and the second angel's message. And on here, we have the third angel's message when we get to the sanctuary and the third angel. Right? So that's who we are. And for us, remember, now let me ask you this. Who is Habakkuk talking to? He's talking to us because he says at the end it will speak. So at the end we have to put it plain upon tables, right? So he's talking to us from way back in the past. But if he's talking to us, then we're not supposed to worry about the Ten Commandments so much as being like the Jews did, because the Jews had the Ten Commandments. We are more about giving prophecy. The law has already been established, but now as a people, when the little book is opened, we were raised up to share the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation, the revelation of Jesus Christ to the world. That's the Adventist job. You can't give the 300 messages without prophecy. That is the job. That's what we have been laid out by the history and God in this time to do. If we're doing anything else, then guess what we're not doing? We're not being just by faith. He who is lifted up is not right in him, but the just shall live by their faith. And if our faith is that we believe the Seventh-day Advent message is true, and we believe the prophecies are true, and we believe that Jesus is coming back, and we believe the Sabbath is Saturday, then our job by faith is to give this message. And how are we supposed to do it? Make it plain upon tables. And when they come and reproach you, make it plain upon a table that they read it and run with it. Now let's read what Ellen White has to say about it. Where are we at?
390.
390. Now I'm talking loud because my voice is loud and I have a loud voice. I'm not screaming or yelling or angry. I think I would do pretty good in a tent meeting. I don't know if you heard what Ellen White said about the tent meetings. The men had to yell and they had to be amplified as best they could to reach. But when Ellen White spoke, the people at the far end of the camp could hear her as though she was standing right next to them, and she was not yelling.
2 miles away.
Yeah, so that's pretty amazing, isn't it?
I was one of the few pastors that went through a class in our preaching and projecting your voice so that you could speak.
Oh, nice.
Really?
When I was in Australia, they took all of the pastors who were going to become pastors, and they took us out into the cow patties. Way out.
Nice.
And then they would set us all one at a time at the end of the cow patty, and then everyone else would back up until they couldn't understand what you were saying.
Right.
So that you could see visually how far your voice was projecting.
Plus, you'd see somebody who had known how to do it, how much further you could go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now Patty's while they're backing up.
Yeah.
How'd you do?
How far
Fine.
you get? How far
Well,
you get?
once you learn how to project your voice, it's much easier. You take your voice from down here in your stomach,
And it's also healthier.
you push it with your diaphragm up out the top of your head. Now I know that sounds kind of weird,
Shockery.
but what ends up happening is your voice resonates, and you use your cavity and your cranial cavity to project.
Because
sound.
sound is vibration. So if you're...
Because you woke me up several times when I fall asleep in church.
You fell asleep in church.
You know when to.
I don't fall asleep, I go to sleep.
And has anyone ever told
Verify
you
that
about how
one.
your ears light up when the sun comes into the windows?
That's the Holy Spirit, Virginia.
So what page?
Listening to the Lord.
390.
390.
That's what you
That's
said.
great.
But you know what? Look at the top.
No, not the top. The side is where the actual date...
Okay.
Yeah.
Rich, can I make a quick comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say how grateful I am that Pastor Mike
Amen.
has agreed to come here.
Praise the Lord. And
Humility and giving his time. I know he's extremely busy.
I feel so humbled to be able to come. I asked Bob and Bill,
Oh, he's shocked. He said, "Yeah, I'll come on."
yeah, I don't want to come if I'm not invited or welcome or if I'm going to make anybody nervous. They said, no, you can come. So I'm just really grateful and humbled that you let me.
well, thank you. But everything we're studying, none of it's anti-church or anti-conference or anti-pastors. We have no bone to pick.
No, and
But we're not allowed to
Especially
preach. We're not allowed to
age.
study there, so we have to do it over here.
yeah, and I see that. And the truth is that it is a hot point.
And if we're not correct, you can fix some of that because you'll be there studying. Or
I got you fixed on Syria. And Syria.
yeah. But if we can't come together, we can't iron out any small little errors or something.
But I've told many in the church, this is not an issue like the anti-Trinitarians. This is not an issue like feast days and all of that.
Godhead or any
This
of that.
this is a difference in interpretation. This is a difference in understanding and looking at the chart, seeing whether it's important, or sometimes it's a difference between ignorance and
just a lack of study or anything. Right.
Right.
There really is a fear among Christians in even touching.
And it's more of like a gossip fear than an actual established fear.
Because they've seen churches split. They've seen people.
But you know why they split? Because the people who wouldn't allow the 25-20 kicked the other ones out.
So here's what I told Bill. I told Bob the same thing. The issue isn't even over 25-20. The issue is over whether or not we're willing to respect one another.
Amen.
Whether we're willing to, are we going to take our viewpoint and push it whether people want it or not?
Amen.
Are we going to make it a salvational issue and say, listen, if you don't see it the way I see it, you're out of the kingdom of heaven? You remember in...
Nobody's saying that here.
No.
Right. But we've been accused of that many, many, many times.
But individuals, this is the message that's in people's minds.
Right.
In the New Testament, the perfect illustration that I have is meat sacrificed to idols. Paul says some of the church believes ardently
And now it's cursed.
that you cannot eat meat sacrificed to idols. If you do,
You're done.
You're done. You're done. You're toast. You cannot eat meat sacrificed
Pagan.
to idols. And then he says, but the stronger Christians know that an idol is nothing
Right.
and have complete freedom. And
It doesn't mean that they.
Hold on just
It doesn't
a
mean they
second.
keep themselves from it,
Hold
but they're
on
not
just a
afraid of it.
Paul does not draw a line in the sand and say, this is which side is correct, and you've got to be on this side. He reaches a higher bar, and this is what the higher bar is. He says, let each be fully convinced in his own mind. And what does that tell us? That tells us that the human conscience, the human belief and will is sacred.
Sure.
Yeah, how you arrive at your beliefs, that's sacred. And we've got to respect one another and support one another in our walks rather than being a stumbling block and dividing one another. So,
Amen.
anyways,
You know, such words thou hast never heard before from one like you. I have never heard a pastor or a leader of any kind who was against this ever have any. Well, you're not against it necessarily or whatever, but I haven't had any friendliness come from that direction. It's always it's angry. It's an anger.
there's no need.
All right.
We're put on the defense constantly.
So what can we do to help this situation?
Do you know why I'm here? I'm here because Bill asked me to be here. So I wouldn't even be here speaking if he didn't say, "Hey, Rich, can you come and do a meeting for us?" You know, I do want to get the message out. I want to tell the whole entire world, but I'm not beating anybody over the head or annoying any of the people.
Yeah.
But people have done that in the past, though, and that has a problem. But usually, that's what you said. Feast keepers and the other ones, they do so much damage that something else comes in new, and they're like, "Oh, you're going to be like those people."
I'll tell you what I do with people who I study with. I ask their permission before I present to them the Sabbath, before I present to them the mark of the beast or the beast, because if I foister it upon them, I've broken down trust. Trust is so key in our relationship as Christians. We can see things differently, but if I gain your permission to share my point of view, even if you disagree, trust is not broken.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I say to Bill, hey Bill, you know, I've been studying on the beast or the mark of the beast. I would love the opportunity to share this with you. Are you open to that? And you say, yeah. And then at the end of the study you say, you know, I really don't see things the way you see them. There can still be a friendship and a trust between us, and we can still move forward. But if I say, hey Bill, I'm going to tell you what the beast is and the mark of the beast, whether you like it or not. And if you reject it...
Yeah, Bill Campbell.
You're talking to the wrong Bill, I'm sorry.
So do you see? Now I'm put in a position where I either have to break the relationship or I have to agree with you to stay in the relationship. And that's never healthy. Now this comes down to personalities, right?
Sure.
Sometimes we just have that personality where we say, black or white, you either agree with me or you're my enemy, and that is what has caused, in my opinion, what has caused a lot of fractures in churches over this issue and over 1,000 other issues.
But aside from just the things that are right and wrong, this is a thing between good and evil. And the devil is trying everything he can. And if he can use an Adventist, a good Adventist, if he can get through under their skin and use them, he will. So the person doesn't have to be a bad person. All you have to do is like they got caught up in their own thoughts and in their own fears. And so they project this whole thing that isn't even real. Right. And it's the devil speaking to them. But it doesn't mean they're really bad. It just means that they're caught up in not being able to get through it.
Yes. Yeah. And then people also learn in stages, right?
Right.
So there may be somebody who's not ready for the charts. They're ready for here, here, and here. But you just wait till they're ripened to the place where, all right, now they're ready.
Here's where I like to put people. I want to put people on a Revelation seminar. It's the softest, easiest way to get the most truth into anyone in the shortest amount of time. And once they do that, not only do they know that, but they have enough eye salve to be able to understand things that they wouldn't have been able to understand if they didn't already know that other stuff. Even if it's a different subject, just because more light gives you more brain power. So I always want to, but the problem is I can't get anyone to sit down to 30 meetings. Yeah, at the church it's easier because you can invite them or something there, like sitting down. But if you try to tell them, hey, I got the whole Doug Batchelor's, the whole Ken Cox, the whole this, the whole that, and you share it with them, you're going, 2 weeks later, you're going like, hey, how those videos going? What videos?
Yeah.
But then they keep asking you questions because they don't know anything. You're going, it's in the videos. So watch the videos.
You got to sit with them.
Yeah. Well, I got enough time for that. But I want to just.
Have you heard the story of the greatest soul winner in South America?
Yeah.
Did you hear it? So Mark Finley was introduced to.
Let me just interject. His label for me was the busiest man in Adventism, because he was doing seminars, traveling the world. It is written, going to camp meetings. I never saw anybody in the history of Adventism more busier than Mark Finley.
Oh man, that guy's all over. He would do meetings. I'm getting sidetracked.
Yeah, don't get sidetracked. I want to hear your thing.
So, greatest soul winner in South America. The president in South America said, we're going to introduce you to the greatest soul winner in South America. And Mark Finley's thinking, okay, tall, 6 foot, whatever. This guy's got a commanding presence. He walks into the room.
It was a handicap version, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a short little guy.
Oh, he wasn't.
And he walks in, he says, this is the greatest soul winner in South America? Okay, I've got to find his secret. What do you do? The guy says, all I do is this and this and this. And he says, this and this and this. What is this and this and this?
I only know 3 chords.
Yeah. And he says, explain it more to me. What is this and this and this? He says, I take your videos that you preach. I put them into the player and I press play. And he says, I sit with the person through the video. Yeah. At the end of the video, when you're all finished preaching on the screen, I turn to the person next to me and I say, so what do you think? What did you think? And the person says, whatever. And he helps the person make a decision. They pray about it and he says, okay, I'll see you next week. He says the next week he does the same thing. He just puts in the next video.
See, I've never had the time or the ability to do that. I can't get anyone to sit down with me if I did. When I first came to Adventist, I made sheets, and I made one for every video with boxes so you could check them out so you didn't have to watch the same one twice. And I was going to buy TVs and set VCRs up so people could have their own little booth with headphones and they could all study all week long. Guess what? Never, ever happened. Not once.
There's one other secret that they do in South America that you're missing that nobody tells you about, and it's every single watching of the video is combined with a meal.
Mm.
Yeah, breaking bread.
So
it is.
But here's
you invite them to eat together, and then you watch the video after the meal.
So here's one of the reasons why I'm so studied.
I do that with
Here's one of the reasons why I'm so studied. Every time I tell someone to watch a video, I watch it again myself, trying to remember exactly what they're going to see step by step going through this video, so I can kind of gauge what they've seen and haven't seen. And they didn't watch the video, but I watch it every time. So I'm watching 10 videos a week, and I don't know if anybody else is, but when I tell someone to watch a video, I watch it again because I want to remember what I'm sending to them. So, and you know what? I get something out of it. I enjoy it. You know? So,
Wake them up too, you know, like when it
Yes.
goes off.
Yeah, it is that personal.
but I always try to, whoever I'm with, I try to engage them while trying to see if, you know, how are they receiving it? Because my goal is not to yell words at them. My goal is to convey communication, and it doesn't happen all the time, but that's my goal, you know. But anyways, that's. But I have. You even think of two things I want to say. My argument, well, three now. I have a new argument now for all false teachings. First off, when Jesus was tempted and he said, "Hey, make this rock into bread," he says the scripture, and the guy goes, "Oh, we'll do this." See, the right answer never stops the devil. He gives him the right answer every time. He just comes back with another question. So what you have to do is you have to set their feet to the fire, and you don't let them ask the second question. Say, no, back to question number one. But you have to have the right questions. So for feast keepers, I have, okay, first off, if you don't know the Sabbath and all that, feast keeping is not your worst problem. But if you're an Adventist keeping the Sabbath, keeping feast, here's the problem. If Jesus went into the holy place in 1844, and then he's in the most holy place, where's Passover? It's at the altar of burnt offering. It's a sacrifice. It's in the outer court. What does the inside of the sanctuary represent? Heaven. It's all gold in there. On the earth is brass. Heaven is gold. So you have to leave Jesus in the most holy place in April or whenever to come down to earth to go celebrate the Passover with Jesus, who's not there because he's in the most holy place giving the Day of Atonement. So if you want to keep the feast, you're going to have to leave Jesus to do it. See, that's an argument that they can't. How are you going to get around that? See, we can argue about, well, Paul kept the feast. And they always want to say Colossians is saying the opposite of what it's saying. Paul's not saying, don't let anyone tell you can't keep the feast. He's saying, don't let anyone tell you have to keep the feast. So he's not calling it a shadow because he's calling it not a shadow. So all those arguments end up with nothing. But that argument there, I'm going like, how are you going to keep the feast in the outer court if he's in the most holy place? You're not going to have Jesus at your feast? So now if I hold their feet to the fire and I say, no more questions, no more of your papers, put your papers back. We're still on question number one. Explain to me this first. And if I don't let them get past that, two things happen. One, it shakes their belief, if it does at all. But if not, I don't have to waste time spending time with the devil, casting my pearls before swine. So that's my feast-keeping answer. You can use it. I share it. When it comes to the Sabbath, I tell the people, listen, you bring all your calendars. Bring the naval observatory. Bring the Roman Caesars. You bring every single thing you got. Bring me all the papers. Bring a truckload. But I'm going with the beavers.
Yeah.
You know about 7-day beavers? Yeah. So at that point, I'm sorry, but even if, no matter what, if for one thing, here's what I need you to explain to me before we go on. You have to explain to me why the beavers keep a 7-day week, why it's not an 8-day week, and why do they have it on the same day of the Jews? When you tell me that, then we can go to step number 2. But right now, I don't want to read any of your papers because you know what? Men lie. Beavers don't.
Charlotte, have you seen the video about the beavers?
No, 7-day beavers.
They're called the 7-day beavers.
It's actually all beavers, but this is just one family that was observed.
This guy goes out and he videos these beavers, and every 7th day on the Sabbath, the beavers all go into their little den, and they don't come out until the Sabbath is finished. And it happens every single
On Saturday?
Yeah.
So the guy went.
Every day, but Sabbath they take a break.
The guy went. Check this out. The guy went.
It's an
He,
amazing video.
the guy moved to the country and he goes on walks every Sabbath with his family. Never sees any beavers. Then one day he went there on a Monday and here's these beavers just working away. And he's going like, wow, I've never seen them here before. But they always took their walks on Sabbath. So then he started to film them. And over 17 years they did it. And the beavers kept that same pattern all 17 years. And I imagine that's with all of them. But you know what? But here's the thing about the Ten Commandments. Thou, nor thy maidservant, nor thy manservant, nor thy ox, or thy ass shall do any work within thy gates. Now, the ox and the ass, those are beasts of burden. They work. God's saying the animals that work, you make sure they rest also. The deers aren't running around resting. They're resting anyways. They're not carrying any loads. They're not doing any burdens. But you know who else is a burden keeper? Bees. And bees stay in the hive on Sabbath. They don't go hunting for honey.
Even nature.
Here's the thing. All nature follows God. Only man disobeys God.
Now, to be clear, I don't think we're saying all beavers keep the Sabbath or all bees keep the Sabbath.
But these specific ones.
But these specific ones did.
Well, these are the ones that we observed.
The Levite bees.
But I haven't. But we haven't also. That's a good qualification. But we also, I don't know that we've seen anyone refute it. I don't think we've seen a beaver that did work to prove that not all of them do, because nobody's going around studying beavers. But until someone shows us one, we have no example of a beaver not doing it.
Well,
He did it for
I'm just saying,
16
if you go on a hike on Saturday and you see a beaver gnawing on a tree.
Don't get back in his den.
I'll say, get back in your den.
Yeah. Anyways,
That's a good answer.
I'll reprimand
Track
them.
with him.
You know, if we had little medals, she would have got one right here, the Medal of Honor for that one.
Hey, Rich, I just want to thank Bill and Mary for opening up their home today.
Oh, praise the Lord,
for us
yes.
to do this, and we had committed to an hour and a half, but it's been a special day today, and special meeting with Pastor Mike here, but it'll be dark in 30 minutes, so you know.
I still want.
I told her I was good till midnight, so it's up to you guys.
I'm
I
just,
Wear out your way.
I'm opening that
my
option.
family's waiting back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let the dogs out.
Well, thank you for coming.
Who let the dog out?
Yes, thank you.
Privilege.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rich.
You know, when I show up to church, it's because I'm going to have a meeting. Because I live in Old Town and I work in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I work in Seattle is because that's where my work is. And the reason why I live in Old Town is because I'm following counsel and I needed to be in the country. Once I got in the country, you couldn't take me out of it. And it's just been an evolution in my life. I spend a lot of time on the road and I hate driving. And I spend a lot on gas and it's getting more expensive. But I wouldn't trade the country for staying in the city for a minute. And so, I mean, Seattle starts in Bellingham and ends in like Olympia.
Yeah.
There's no division.
Well, Bellingham's not quite as bad as.
There's a gap between there, like Arlington and Darrington is a little bit more farmy and woodsy, but
Going away.
it's just city.
It's too close to the I-5 corridor for me.
I remember the days when there was 5 King County cops that covered the entire King County, which is like from the middle of Seattle all the way down to Olympia. It's like, you know, you had to get in really big trouble to have one of those guys show up because there was only 5 of them.
All the cuts, there's probably only 2 now.
Well, now every single 5 feet is a city.
Yeah, that's true.
So now you have a police force for every single city. There's more police. I mean, and now you don't even have to have a police. You just have to walk through the go through the wrong intersection with a photographic stoplight, and you're gonna get busted anyways. So you just gotta stop speeding.
I want to say something to the pastor, and you know, the one thing that seems really important is that the 7 times is part of the true midnight cry, which will be repeated at the end right before Jesus comes, and it's along with five things.
You know what? I'm gonna give you that folder, and right there, the page you're on is page 2 and 3 of the Midnight Cry. It's the one from Samuel Snow, and that is what the Midnight Cry is. And understand this. Let me see this. When Ellen White was given to the Adventist Church, God is establishing His final church for the whole 6,000 years. All these things were done aforetime upon those who live at the end of the world. We are the ones who are supposed to finish this work. There's nobody else. And of us, half of us might not even do it. The work is so important. It's the most important work that ever was on this planet, and yet we aren't really taking it that seriously. But when we do take it seriously, Ellen, when God set up this church, he gave it a prophet. But the first vision that prophet had, she says, I looked for the people, I couldn't find them. He said, look a little higher. And then I saw them, but and they were all on this path, and behind them on the path was the midnight cry.
Bright light behind them.
And it shined all the way to the city. It didn't stop when the pioneers said, oh, we're not going to study this anymore, or any of these other rumors that this isn't truth. There was the vision from God isn't that, oh, the went this far and then the people stopped studying it, or it was no longer truth. They decided it wasn't truth anymore. What the testimony from God, and she's not having a vision she's seeing because she ate too many cupcakes. She's seeing a vision because God's delivering her a special video in her brain, and she sees and she says, this light behind them is called the midnight cry. And that many people said that they'd been on the path too long, and Jesus should have showed up by now, and so they got weary, and they began to deny the light that was behind them. And it says, and the light behind them went out. And when that light went out, their feet were in perfect darkness, and they fell to the wicked world below. So they're no longer on the path. So here's the thing: when God tells the end from the beginning, right? So if God tells the end from the beginning, at the very beginning of Seventh-day Adventism, God said, I'm setting up this midnight cry. And it's going to shine all the way. And those who get weary are going to get tired of it, and their light's going to go out, and they're going to fall off the path. But those who keep the light shining behind them, that shines on the path, that truth is not to be discarded. And that's what we're doing today. We're letting go of our history. We're getting rid of the old past. And when God's talking about what you need to do to do what's right, when he's telling Isaiah, I need you to go do a work, Jeremiah, I need you to do a work, here's a coal on your mouth, here's a roll to eat. What I need you to do is go restore the old paths, the ways in which to walk in. Restore the foundations, because the foundation is where we find the rock. It's not the sand. The foundation, the sand isn't where the pillars are. The sand is where the foundation is if you don't build it on a rock. This foundation is the thing that we need to establish, and from that, all truth can stand. But if we can't bring the foundations back and stop being embarrassed of 1844 because Jesus didn't come, and just say, hey, he didn't come. Can I explain it to you? And it was all planned, and it all fits together. And when I add all this to it, it makes everything we do know even that more stronger, because it's showing that every prophet was talking about it, and they're all talking about it directly, and all the dates are like lining up like this all the way down. This doesn't take away from the truth. It makes it 10 times stronger. 10 times stronger. This is like the pulse. They were 10 times wiser after eating this for 10 days. They weren't eating the regular diet that everyone else was eating. They were eating a special diet. And our special diet is the first, second, and third angel's messages. It's just what it is, man.
Thank you, Rick.
So let me close with that.
Vision is in your book, by the way.
Pastor, would you close us out?
Father in heaven, I want to thank you for your word, which is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. And I pray, Lord, that as we continue to walk in the light of your word, that we would be given your Holy Spirit, who will guide us into all truth. I pray, Lord, that you would bless each one of us as we study your word, and I pray that we can humbly walk before you, Lord. I pray that you can just help each one of us as we seek to bear your message to the world. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.